playing in the background, and we'll just get that started. So I'm gonna start this poll. For those of you joining, we have a little poll going on here for our leveraging LinkedIn conversation. We just want to get to know you a little bit. Want to get to know how you're using LinkedIn, how often you're using LinkedIn. Then we're going to start our conversation shortly. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you guys for participating. Thank you for doing that poll for us. And so we're just gonna jump in and get started. Thank you for joining us on today's panel discussion on leveraging LinkedIn, moving beyond the profile and into relationships. I am Yamife. I am the VP of Records for the National Black MBA Association, Twin Cities. Our wonderful panelists are here to provide us with insight and help answer the questions, now what? You made and create connections. You've added them on LinkedIn, but then you wonder, now what? How do I open up that conversation and build on those relationships and not just become another connection? So I'm gonna go and introduce our panelists. So today we have John, who is a talent connection manager at Salo. John is responsible for helping to build the Salo human resource talent community by cultivating relationships in the local marketplace and establishing dynamic connections, as well as providing consultation to the HR teams on labor market supply and demand, work style preferences, location of talent, and the competitive landscape of gig economy workers in the Twin Cities, Chicago, and the national stage. As well from Salo, we have Sue, who's a senior business development director. She was responsible for developing relationships with clients, partners, and consulting, and providing solutions to clients in interim projects. Also, we have from the University of Minnesota, Carlson School of Management, we have Will, who is the Associate Director and Career Coach and Graduate Business Career Center. Will coaches working professionals in completing their MBA and their master's towards meaningful work. He is passionate about connecting job seekers and employers. Thank you, panelists, for joining us. So we want this to be a conversation. We want you to engage with us. So please feel free to use the Q&A section or the chat that we are having monitors, and we will get those questions answered. All right, panelists, how are you guys doing today? Let's get started. So one of the questions that we actually posed to our attendees is, how often do you use LinkedIn and what do you use LinkedIn for? So we're going to throw that question right back at you guys. How often do you use LinkedIn, and what are the tools and resources that you use LinkedIn to help you with?
Well, I mean, I might kick this off just because, well, I think we're all probably in it a lot, but I think I might potentially be in this a little bit more. So welcome everyone, and super excited to talk about LinkedIn because I love it and I'm in it all the time. But I'm in it every day. Usually from the time I wake up in the morning, I get into it pretty quick. Just because of the nature of the work that I do. And then usually I'm kind of in and out of it all day. And I think between Sue and Will and I, we're going to give you guys lots of things to think about in terms of how often to potentially be in it, depending on what you're looking to use LinkedIn for, and then the ways that you can use it. But just to answer the first question about kind of how often, it's a daily thing for me. And I would encourage the folks on in this meeting, almost regardless of what you're looking for out of this, I would definitely encourage you to be in it a lot, because there's a million ways you can use it that are going to really help you network and get connected to folks that it probably makes sense for you to connect with. So I'll leave it at that and hand it off to Sue and or Will.
Thanks, John. Sue Newton here, and John and I work together, slightly different capacities, but he's an awesome teammate. And I would say John probably uses it more. As he mentioned, I am a daily user of LinkedIn also. I have a few things that I'll talk about later, but one of the things that might be helpful for you that I learned from someone else is just to put it in your calendar. You know, John does it right when he wakes up. Again, this all comes back to, and we want to hear from you in the chat throughout this next hour here, where and why and what you want to know about LinkedIn, because I use it as a sales tool, because my role is networking with new and current clients in a sales capacity, as well as networking with potential consultants. So, you know, I use it for two different reasons. And, you know, we want to know so that we can kind of tailor our answers around what you are looking for out of LinkedIn. Because we could probably talk for 5, 6, 7 hours about this topic, but I use it for networking. So I'm looking to meet anybody who wants to, you know, talk about consulting, or if they're a business owner or HR leader who wants to understand what we do, or perhaps even a vendor who is interested in partnering, and we can connect and learn from each other. So you'll hear a theme from me and probably from John today, because it's a value of Salos, is curiosity. So I would just write that down and we'll talk about that today. But I think that value and that trait is really good when you're using LinkedIn. Because I think it can calm some fears about someone thinking the wrong thing about a reach out on LinkedIn. If you come from a place of curiosity, you can't fail. So, Will, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I come from a little different part of the industry. So I'm in higher ed, and I'm working with students and alumni, but also employers. So I use it all the time. But I would say that out of career professionals, is probably not as common as much as I use it, but I have it on my phone and I have it on my desktop. So one thing I want to point out is, you know, there are two different ways that you can really access this. And if you have it on your phone and you're just scrolling through that, you lose out on some of the rich features that the desktop version has. So you can definitely go into more of that. But a lot of what I'm doing during the day when I'm at my office and in front of my computer is doing advanced searches to find alumni in interesting fields to connect students to them, or finding hiring managers, recruiters, different contacts at a company that one of my students is interested in, and then trying to facilitate that connection. So I like to say it's my favorite social media platform. It's the one that I'm in the most. But yeah, just happy to be here. So thanks. And I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, guys.
Can I add one thing to that? Yeah, Mifa, I want to add one thing to that. I think one of the things I do too is I kind of use it in a two-way street. I have my professional sort of network that I spend time with, but I also kind of do some personal stuff in there too. And so depending on who you are on the call, what stage you're in, if you're a recent college graduate, in school, more of an experienced professional, you know, there's a lot of things, from things like just news and different types of groups that you have an interest in outside of just your professional connections. I think it's an important tool. Just as a reminder, you can use this tool for in multiple ways across multiple disciplines. It doesn't just have to be a professional networking tool, although it's very good at that. I use it for lots of different things, even personally, staying connected with folks that I haven't had conversations with in a while, but also, like I said, there's a LinkedIn news section. They gather your interest and it's pretty smart. So it knows the content that you're interested in, and it can help feed you things that may be of interest to you, even outside of your profession. So something to think about.
Yeah, no, I like the points too about using it on different versions, like with your phone, your desktop, because I'm definitely more of a phone user of LinkedIn. So I probably am not getting as many of the news sections that you guys mentioned on the desktop. And so just wanted to kind of share with you all and a little bit with the attendees too, the poll results. So we actually had a lot of the people on the poll, 89% of people said that they use LinkedIn as a networking tool. You know, so that's something that they're actively using for. And one thing that I'm actually really surprised at is, oh, there it is popping up. It says that 67% of people use it every day, which I am a user of LinkedIn. I go in every single day, several times a day, and I'm just browsing for a lot of different things. So I think it's great that people are going in there and using that as a tool every single day. So that's awesome.
That's great.
So we're just going to kind of move on to our next question. I know we talk a lot about networking, we talk a lot about connections. And one thing about networking that people say is that, you know, they're a little bit of concerns about how do I network? Do they feel like they're maybe using that person, only reaching out to them when they need something or when they need a favor? So I guess the question is like, what are your feelings about networking and connecting? And then what can you say to somebody who's concerned about only reaching out when they need something or only contacting somebody to talk about a new job opportunity?
I start. I love this. I love this question because I think it's fair, and I think a lot of folks are worried about that. And I personally, you know, as I'm reaching out to someone or having someone reach out to me, I do appreciate when someone shares something that maybe they saw the reason why they're reaching out. So being specific and just being genuine. If I can give any advice, it's just be genuine and just say, this is why I'm reaching out. But then you can also add in, you know, I'd also love to hear about you. I'd love to hear about your story. And that kind of takes away any concern, in my opinion, around being worried about, you know, being a user. Maybe one tactic not to use, and I think it's probably pretty obvious, but I still get a lot of these too. It's just when someone, and I'm very aware of this in my role as a salesperson, is if it comes across as I only want to sell to you, that doesn't feel awesome. If someone wants to connect, or if you do want to sell, please be honest and be genuine, but also be able to add in, I'm just really curious about X. Maybe it's about how they got where they are. Maybe it's about, I'm curious about the company. Anything like that, I think feels like there's an interaction versus just an ask. So, you know, that is one of the things, again, the genuine, the curiosity, and then have courage and just reach out and also, you know, don't take it personally. If someone doesn't respond, most likely it's because they're busy, not because they don't want to help you. But being as specific as you can about the reason why you're reaching out and adding in another genuine question or curiosity, or gosh, I don't know if you're the right person, but it seemed like it would make sense for us to connect. Those people, I think 100% always respond to. And I feel like I get a response back to people when I'm, you know, when it's kind of a approach of both ends and not just an ask.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that too. I think the number one turnoff for me when someone sends me an invite is when they don't know who I am. They aren't very specific, but it definitely feels salesy. And so I'm not even in that type of role. And I just kind of laugh when I see that. I'm like, and often I'll still respond and be like, you know, thanks so much, but I don't think I'm the right person for you. And then they'll be persistent about that. So I think my biggest thing would be relationship building. And so if you think about starting with a relationship, and so that when you do need to go around for the next time when you might have a more specific ask, you've already got a relationship built as best you can. Now, that's not to say that there won't be times when you need to reach out and say, hey, you work at a company that I'm super fascinated in, and I'd love to just learn more about it. I mean, there's reasons to start with a bit more of a cold call approach, but if there is any ability for you to just start building those relationships now, so that when you actually do need that ask for whatever that thing is, then it's asking a friend rather than asking, out of the blue. So that'd be my big takeaway is always try to build as many relationships. And if you're just starting now, today is the best time to start. So start building those relationships, because you never know when you're going to need them. So John, I'll pass it over to you.
Everything you guys said, I would agree with. In fact, Sue stole a couple of my big ahas. Thanks, Sue. The don't take it personally if you don't hear back, I think is really important. It depends on the stage in your career that you're at, but it's likely a function of just busyness, and not everybody works in their LinkedIn the way we do. So definitely don't take that personally. But I think the big thing I would say is I agree with Sue and Will in that it's not all about the ask, but I would also say you don't get what you don't ask for. So have courage and reach out to people that maybe you're a little bit uncomfortable reaching out to because you don't have a strong connection, or it's a little colder, as Will said, than maybe you thought. And I teach my kids this. I'm like, you don't get what you don't ask for. So you go into it professionally with some guidance, as hopefully we're going to be able to provide. If you have somebody that's connecting you to that person, I don't think of it as name dropping. I think of it as, hey, Will and I know you and Will know each other, and he mentioned that you might have some opportunities in your supply chain area. I'm really interested in supply chain, and I'm really interested in Cargill, and would love to just spend some time. I know you're super busy. Maybe just for a quick 15 minutes to touch base, learn more about you. And again, it's really about what can you do for them as well. And so I think if you go into it the right way, I wouldn't want you to stop and say, I probably shouldn't reach out to that person. Reach out to that person, but do it the right way. Because to Will's point, you never know what's going to come about from that conversation. I mean, it's really about connecting to. Sue mentioned the stay low values around curiosity. Another one of our values is connecting. I mean, connections are everything in this in the world. So if you're hesitant to do it, I would say try to put that hesitation aside, make that connection, and see where it goes. So
I love that. And this kind of had a comment, and then Lachelle, thank you so much for that question in the chat about leveraging your expertise as a subject matter expert. How do I make that happen? How do I do that on LinkedIn? And so I was going to add something, and this kind of tees right up into that sometimes you might get a request from somebody, or you just might reach out to somebody, and maybe it might not be tagged as best practice, but just to make the connection with them. Keep in mind that I agree with Will, and we are really purposefully and intentional about building a relationship versus just having a bunch of connections. There's also the viewpoint of having those connections and being able to see that news feed, and to be able to be kind of aware of what's happening with other people in other industries and with other companies. I think that is okay, and that might not be a best practice as some people might describe, as far as just having a connection without knowing the person. I many times get asked, hey, could you introduce me to this person? And I said, I'd love to, but we're just LinkedIn connected. I don't actually know them. But that leads into another conversation that I'll follow up with and say, what exactly are you looking for? And maybe I'll have another connection. So I don't think that having just a connection is bad. I do agree with Will that really building on that connection of a relationship is great. But that kind of answers some of what you were asking about, Lachelle, and then I'll let John and Will weigh in on that as well. As far as sharing expertise, I think that is one of the things that, quite honestly, I love about LinkedIn, and I've been really utilizing it now since really the pandemic more than ever, is really articles, topics, conversations, the expertise that people have. I think we're starting to use LinkedIn more to share that, because we've all been kind of like working differently, right? And so I think it's a great place to share. I think being able to, tag different people that, chat with them first. But Lachelle, an idea would be to tag a few people, like say hello, whenever you have anything to talk about, please tag me. Let me know when you're going to do it, and tag me in it, and I can share with my network as well. But I think that's a great way to be able to share something that you have, be it an article or a white paper, or maybe just a comment. That is one of the activities that lately I've been pushing myself to do, and I do put that in my calendar. So, you know, when we talk about kind of activating these ideas into action, LinkedIn is a tool. It doesn't mean you have to sit on LinkedIn all day, like you're busy at work, but get on there, find something that you want to follow up with, and then bring it to email. Sometimes things can get lost as well. So, Lachelle, from your question, you know, who liked your post? Can you send a message and follow up on that? You know, maybe they're genuinely interested in what you have to say. Maybe they're a vendor that is interested in partnering with you on how you might be able to help them in your area of expertise, and just have that in your calendar of follow-up time, if that makes sense, because, you know, some of us use LinkedIn more than others, but, you know, if you're mid-career, you want to make sure that you're sharing your expertise, like Lachelle was asking about, or looking for what's next. You want to make sure you're in front of the right people, companies, and that you're sharing the right message, if that makes sense. So being able to just maybe even put it in your calendar for a half hour, you know, do it in the morning before your day starts. That way you can kind of activate it out of the tool and into what you're using in your day, to connect with somebody, follow up, schedule a meeting or a call with. I think that is one of the best things you can do to just not get stuck just being in LinkedIn. It's like, how can we activate from here? So Lachelle, hopefully those are a couple little tips, but what do you think? Will, I'll toss it over to you. What do you think on Lachelle's question?
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I actually just saw an algorithm report from LinkedIn this week with kind of a nice infographic, and it talked about like key times to post and different things like that. And that's not how I try to use LinkedIn. I don't try to showcase myself as a thought leader on LinkedIn. I'm more using it as a behind the scenes tool to connect. So I feel like one thing I would recommend is kind of dig into those algorithm reports and see like how can you get some of your information to be up high and in people's feeds more often. And since I'm not an expert in there, I'm going to not talk much more about that. But other than I'd recommend like kind of looking into algorithms for LinkedIn. But the one thing I will say is in our office, we use a kind of a catchy saying of 3, 2, 1 of try to do 3 likes of other content in a day, try to do 2 comments on someone else's post in a day, and try to post something yourself once a day. So thinking of 3, 2, 1 as a way to just get yourself kind of, here's what I want to do. Now, some people think, oh, I can do 3, 2, 1 in a week, and that's fine, or maybe every other day. But depending on how much you want to like get your content out into other people's feeds, I would recommend come up with some sort of strategy like that that's very easy for you to do, and then just start seeing where it grows and how it builds from there. John, I'll toss it over to you if you have any other thoughts on this.
I love the 3, 2, 1. Well, I haven't heard that, but I'll probably use it too. So thanks for that. The only thing I'd add, Lachelle, is you know, just thinking about like the groups you're choosing to be a part of. I think groups are really important. We haven't discussed that, but some you know, it's especially important when you talk about being a SME in something. My guess is whatever that is, there's a group for it. And if there isn't, you can create one. So I would say the best one really good way to share your expertise, be a thought leader, participate in group discussion is through joining these groups. I was actually just checking out my groups on my profile here because it's been a while. I'm part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Recruiting Strategy Planning group, Global Diversity and Inclusion in the Workplace, Buffalo Wild Wings intern alumni. So all these different groups, I used to be part of that organization, typically have discussions within there. And you know, I would recommend choosing 3 to 5 thoughtful groups that I always say a few hundred or more members, just to make sure it's like not 2 people that are, you know, having conversations back and forth. And then really participating in discussions. They typically have a most popular discussion section within each group. I would recommend checking out what those look like and commenting, participating in that discussion. That's where your expertise and your subject matter background can really come out and can turn into something, whether it's a connection with somebody else with that similar interest or whether it's something bigger. That typically is a good way I've seen and I've done in my past where you can really get out some of the background and that subject matter expertise that you want to get out there. So I would recommend groups.
Awesome, thank you guys for that. And just a quick question that came in, this is being recorded. So it will be sent out to everybody and then also included on the newsletter too. So I know somebody had a quick question about that. They probably want to get a little more of the nuggets and rehear it again. So thank you. I know we talked a little bit, John talked a little bit about groups. And so different people are in different stages of their lives. And depending on where you are, new college student, somebody who is a young professional, mid-career, who are the kind of contacts or who are the kind of people that we should be in contact with when we build those networks, those connections. So if I'm somebody who is a student and I'm looking for that new job, like who are the kind of people maybe I should be reaching out to or considering and talking to?
Well, as someone who works at a school with students, I think I'll jump on this one to start, but definitely alumni networks. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that you have when you're paying all those tuition dollars to go to school. You're paying for relationships as well, and not in some sort of dirty way, but just as a thought that like, okay, I am now going to have all access to professors, to alums, to employers that like these students that are going, but really alumni. It's that kind of that friendly, warm reception out in the professional realm that, there's a LinkedIn page for every school and there's an alumni tab. And so you can always go there. For example, Carlson School of Management, where I work, there's about 50,000 alums that are tied into Carlson School. The University of Minnesota, the broader school, has about 300,000. So if there's a school that you went to, it's going to have a page on LinkedIn and it's going to have a tab for alumni. And you can go and kind of search through that. And there's easy ways to sort by different industries, different geographical areas. But that would be probably the friendliest group of people that you could reach out to is, I'm an alum, you're an alum, or I'm a current student, you're an alum. Hey, would you mind sharing more about what you do or what your job is or, what your company's like or your industry, and just kind of that easy ask of an alum. So I'll wrap it up there, but that's what I would recommend for students.
I've got just a very real example of that too that I'll share. I literally just, this was the other day, I was doing exactly what Will said. Alumni was like the one on my list that was like beeping highlighted, because I think you automatically have a common connection with somebody that you may not know. And that just makes for an easy introduction and transition into a new connection. So I'm with you 100%, Will, on that. I think that's probably number one. And here's another way to do that. So within your profile or once you log into LinkedIn, there's that search function in there. And my alma mater, my undergrad is St. Norbert College in De Pere, Wisconsin. And I just typed in St. Norbert College, and then you can apply filters to that. So I just threw people down as my filter. So people who have St. Norbert College within their profile. And then from there, within the filters, I did location. Minneapolis. I'm in the greater Minneapolis area, so I put that in there. And then I'm in the human resources field, so then I just put in another filter, human resources, and I got 11 results. And as I'm looking at this results, I see one person in particular that I did not know is actually the daughter of one of my favorite professors from when I was at school at St. Norbert, who's in my field as an executive search partner in Minneapolis. Well connected to lots of people. I should know this person. So, I've reached out to her, and we're making time to get together and spend some time together. So I use this for everyone here in this meeting as a very concrete example of it's really simple. A lot of times you're just kind of, you're starting to just make a couple of connections. Oh yeah, St. Norbert, I wonder who lives around me in that area. And what if they're in my discipline and industry? All sorts of really interesting things can come about from that. So again, that was a direct result of somebody that I now am going to start a relationship with based on a few simple search criteria. And it started with alum. It started with where I went to school and wanting to make some connections there. The only other thing I would say is I'm sure there's job seekers in this meeting that have an interest in particular organizations or industries. So, definitely ask around. So part of how you can be successful in LinkedIn is the work you do before you get into LinkedIn. And that's in just the natural connecting that we all do in our day-to-day lives. And if you're really wanting to work at General Mills or Best Buy, start to really ask people in your network or find conversations like, who should I be talking to? Do you have anybody that you know in there? Like, I know personally, my brother's been at Best Buy for 25 years. And I've had interest in the past about wanting to know more. He threw a bunch of names at me. And then boom, I'm dropping my brother's name. He's been there 25. They might not even know him. And, I know you're here and I would love to spend some time with you, really getting to know you and all the great work that you're doing. So contacts within preferred organizations where you may want to work. And again, this is specific to job seekers or people that are interested in certain organizations. There's power in the work that you do before because there's work there. And then once you get some names, then you really go after contacts in those key organizations. And again, if you can provide names as referrals or references, I would highly recommend that you do that. And then again, in your messaging, which we've talked about, which is really important, it's really, I want to get to know you and all the great work you're doing and all the great things Best Buy is doing. And by the way, I happen to know in my research that, really tailor it so it's not just a cold generic reach out. So what about you? What do we miss?
Gosh, that was pretty comprehensive, John and Will. I'm impressed. And again, I do love the approach. And I think who else, when I think about if you're early in your career, alumni all the way, your colleagues that your classmates, your friends, family, connect with them on LinkedIn. They might be connected with somebody that you could ask for a introduction to. And who in these companies might you be reaching out to? Of course, HR and talent acquisition and recruiting within these organizations are great, but I would also say the hiring managers. My husband, great real life example. He is in his role, he is not a recruiter. He loves hearing about our business right now because he is, like a lot of organizations, really helping out. It's kind of like all hands on deck right now with the current state of the market, and they want to obviously get the right talent in the door. And so he's having those conversations. So you better believe he loves getting a reach out from someone who's a potential employee versus, he loves that. So don't hesitate if they're not in HR or a recruiter, they're a hiring leader, reach out and be honest. And I'm interested in your company. I've noticed you've been growing. I know a few people that work there. I'd love to learn more. Can I connect? And should I be talking to you, or is there someone else I could reach out to? Maybe what not to do, is we were chuckling last night, is he did get a message yesterday that was just in all caps that said, "I need a job." He was like, good, all right, let's talk, but probably a better approach, but.
Awesome, thanks. I love that tip about the alumni networks and using those filtering. Coming from the University of Minnesota, it is a huge school with crazy number of alumni. So you think about being that fresh student, like not knowing people and trying to connect with people. I love that you're able to do that filtering down so you can really get to know people in your specific area, your specific area of interest too. I think that's a great tip.
I would also just say to Yamifa that alumni networks are not specific to just schools. Most companies, especially if they're larger, have alumni networks, and that's always a good connection point to make. I know I came from Target, massive alumni network there, and that's a different kind of animal all in itself, but a lot of smaller organizations. So if you've been somewhere, it's always a good network to tap into as well. So it's not alumni is not always just specific to schools, just a call out there.
Right. No, that's good. And so kind of a little bit along that same lines of like, who do we connect with? So when you talk about somebody who's changing kind of like their career path in general, I'm sure they could probably use some of the same tips that you've already mentioned. Was there anything else that you would say for them who are really looking for that complete change, where maybe they don't have that connection in the network that they built in this new industry because they've just kind of met with people in their same industry? So how do they kind of navigate building those relationships?
Yeah, those big shifts in career can be tricky. They happen a lot. So if you're going through that, you're not alone. Lots of people do. Most people do at some point. I would just say, the things that we talked about, I think are probably going to be relevant. Certainly groups and organizations. A lot of times there's a lot of event promotion. This event being one of them on LinkedIn, where you can find opportunities to connect in different areas, where you have a chance to connect with people like we're connecting today, sometimes now in person as we move on. And that's going to be almost more powerful. You can use LinkedIn to kind of identify those opportunities. So for example, if I'm a salesperson like Sue, and I decide one day I want to be a compensation person, there's a comp network, a really strong comp network in the Twin Cities. There's all sorts of ways to get connected to them through LinkedIn, but Oftentimes what that will do is if you're going to identify events through promotional stuff that most people do. I mean, Salo, we promote so much stuff on LinkedIn about things we're doing and things we're seeing. You know, if you find those on LinkedIn, it's an opportunity for you to get with folks that are going to be part of a discipline that obviously you don't have experience with, but it's that conversation and that ability to build that relationship in person or virtually like we're doing now, that can sometimes be the key to really starting to dig in and getting to know more context. And I know this isn't LinkedIn specific, but when you're in those initial meetings, ask for other people that you should be talking to. That's always sometimes uncomfortable for people, but I always would recommend, you know, thank you for your time, Mr. Comp person, and then Comp's new to me, but are there other folks that I should be having conversations with that you'd be willing to make an introduction to so I can continue to learn about this discipline? I can't wait to get dug in, and anybody that I could talk to would be great. Thanks so much for your time. Do that. Will, Sue, what else?
Yeah, I was just typing in the chat. I was struggling to get my unmute. That's my favorite question is, who else should I be talking to? You know, have them open their network up to you so you don't have to just find that person on LinkedIn. And so, you know, it's a warm, you know, lead that way. So anyway, I would also say it depends on where you are in the career change. If you're just starting, you're like, I need to leave this industry, I'm not quite sure what it is next. I think it's information gathering at that point. So you're trying to figure out who you are, what you have to offer, what are those transferable skills that you can offer. And then I would say you're looking for people who've done it already. You know, if you can find someone with the advanced search filters that John was highlighting, and you can find someone's like, hey, they went from sales to a user experience role or consulting to, you know, a specific industry that they're looking at. Like, what is it that that person did to make that jump? It's probably a couple baby steps. It might be one new company and then a new role and then a new role at another company. You know, it might be a couple of steps you got to take, but I think the big thing is do you have anybody that's already walked that journey that you can say, hey, how'd you do it? What steps did you take? So if you're early on in the process, I'd say look for people on LinkedIn that maybe have a couple of job titles, one that you currently have, and then one that you aspire to, and see if that's the person. And the question then would be, hey, you have the perfect profile. I want to hear how you went from this type of role to that type of role. That's easy for them. They get to talk about themselves. You're not asking them, hey, can you get me a job in this field? It's, hey, how did you do it? And you just want to get as much information as possible. You kind of zip your lips while you're listening to them and you just take frantic notes. And then eventually you're going to be flipping that script to like, hey, this is how I think I'm going to be a good fit into this type of job. But early on, it's asking for that information from them. So Sue, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add to this, but I'll hand it over to you.
Will, that was so spot on, and that is absolutely the best thing to do. And people do love to talk. People love to talk about themselves. They love to share. They feel like they have a cool story. So asking them to share, like you said, listen, and then follow up. One of the things we haven't talked about yet is following up. We were talking earlier about it's great to have connections. They don't all have to be, you know, realistically, not all of your connections are going to be really, really, really strong relationships. We want to try and strive for that, but being able to follow up. So if someone, there's a question in the chat about, gosh, there's so many good questions in the chat about the message. It limits the length of the message in order to reach out. Again, follow up. So your initial reach out to someone you're not connected to, you're not going to be able to say everything you want to say. So you want to get their attention. Something that I've used that works is, hey, we haven't met yet. So-and-so mentioned we should connect. We have a lot in common in the HR industry. I am passionate about the mission of your company. When can we connect? I'd love, you know, something like that. That's about all you're going to have room for. Then if they connect, they probably don't take it personally, but they probably won't respond to your message, because I don't know if you've gotten the LinkedIn request like that, but you don't always, like, if you don't click it on the right spot, you can't respond to the message. You just accept the request. So if they accept your request, I don't have a typical number of days, but definitely follow up and say, thank you so much for connecting. I don't know if you caught in my first message why I wanted to connect or who I am, but blah, blah, blah. Then you can fill in the dots there. And then maybe we want to take it to email. You can reach me at suenewton@hellosalo.com, because again, I love LinkedIn. I use it as a tool, and then I want to execute outside of LinkedIn, because I don't want that to be my main communication, because it gets lost for me personally. It gets lost. So I need to move it to phone and email, or whatever system that you're using, and suggest something there. So that is my answer to that question. And I'll let the two of you pipe in too. And then, how did you get into the?
I would just say, while Sue's doing that, 100% on the follow-up, because everyone listening, if you take anything else away, this is your personal brand that we're talking about here. So when you say you're going to follow up and you don't, that impacts your personal brand. And I know this isn't LinkedIn specific, but we're starting in the LinkedIn to be able to do this. And once a person makes that connection with you, even if they don't respond in words, so you're spot on, I would recommend taking that out of LinkedIn and moving it into a phone call or an email. And the reason is because most people don't spend as much time in LinkedIn as we do, right? So that they're not necessarily, really getting an opportunity to be in there on a daily basis, but they are in their email every day. I guarantee you that. So if you can pull it out of there, and really start to communicate with them outside of LinkedIn. And I know this is a LinkedIn conversation, but I still think it's an important lesson to learn to take it out of there whenever you can. I think that's a super important call out. What I do, because I'm not the most organized human being in the world, I ask for time for a follow-up. So if you do get connected with someone and you're just, whatever the conversation is, I'm usually like, God, really appreciate your time. This has been awesome. And I want to be able to give back to you as well. Can I circle back with you in 3 months and just, can we reconnect and just see where things are and whatever the nature of the discussion is. And then I go straight to my Outlook and I code it in yellow. That's how I know I need to be reconnecting with this person on the day that I said I would. And then I put the content of that discussion within that particular invite to myself in Outlook, so I know exactly why I'm calling that person and the context of that discussion, because I committed to circling back in 3 months. And so I'm going to do that. And again, getting outside of the topic, but I just want that for folks to know on this call, those are super important tips as you either continue along in your career, you get started in your career. And this will also set you apart from some of the other people that don't do that, which there are many. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about navigating both LinkedIn and then outside of LinkedIn.
That is next level, John.
There you go.
I am learning so much. Thank you. Real quick, any suggestions on message subject to catch the recipient's attention? Awesome question. You could, and I've done this, is intro from John Cermak. Then they know, like, oh, Cermak sent her my way. Okay, I guess I'll, that might be something. Connect, networking, introduction, question about your organization, something like that. Coming from, I guess I'm just trying to think about the purpose of the meeting would be important in the message, but the person's name who referred you.
That would be the number one thing, I think, Sue. Mm-hmm. Thanks for saying that. I was going to say it too, because immediately then they know that that's going to attract their eye. They're like, oh yeah, I would start off with, Sue Newton mentioned we should connect, whatever that is. And if obviously they know Sue well, and they're going to open that because they have a relationship with Sue. So if you do have a name of somebody that referred you, I would put that in the subject line. I think that's a great one. Sorry to interrupt, Sue. I just had to throw
No, you didn't. No, not at all. And then maybe, what your need is. I need a job, like we were chatting. It worked. I don't know where it went from today, but he's responding. So there's that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So one question that I personally had is, we talk a lot about how we can reach out to other people, how we can connect to other people, but how can we be better connections too? So when somebody reaches out to us, like, what are some things that we also should be, thinking about, considering when we're responding back to other people too? Because, we want to also pass on our knowledge, our experience with other people. Like, how can we be better connections?
I can jump in here. So one of the things, even whether it's you responding or when you are reaching out, I think it's always important to offer to help as well. Because if one of the things you're doing is making an ask, like, hey, I want some of your time, or hey, I want some of your knowledge, or I want you to refer me in for something. I mean, that's maybe ultimately what you want to get at, and you use, a little bit more sensitive language in the initial communication to them. But if you're asking them for something, I think it's a nice way to reciprocate that and say, hey, and let me know if there's ever anything I can do for you, or just know that I'm always in your corner, or however you want to phrase it, that just lets them know that, hey, you're willing to help them out. And maybe it's they can't help you out right now, but they want to circle back around because they know that you're someone that could help them. And that's just the way that you guys stay in touch down the road. So one of the things I would do is just try to always make it clear that you're open and willing to help as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a two-way street, always. Every interaction, every connection you make on LinkedIn and in life is a two-way street. And if it isn't, then you're probably going about it the wrong way. So I couldn't agree more with what Will said. You know, this is a connection that can't be all about you. So to be sure that when you're connecting with people on LinkedIn, or when you're receiving a connection on LinkedIn, you know, I know we're all super busy, but you know, I certainly, and I know Sue, and I'm sure Will does as well, we try to prioritize. You know, I'll get a LinkedIn connection from, you know, an intern in finance in Pennsylvania who somehow came across. Like, I may not spend 2 hours with her on the phone, but I'm sure going to respond to her and just say, hey, thanks for the connection. You know, you know, the next couple of weeks are crazy with the holidays. Let's just stay connected. And if you want to reach back out, you know, in early, you know, January, that's probably going to be better for me. And I'd love to spend a little time together. I think it's realistic and honest to say, you know, we all have to prioritize our time, but I'm not going to leave that blank. And I'm not going to not respond, because I think, you know, everybody deserves that. She's doing what we're encouraging all of us to do. And so as somebody that, to answer your question, you know, I mean, if somebody's reaching out to us, what are some ways that we can do that? Just be honest and transparent about it. And you know, that I think is one way to really help to foster good relationships too.
Yep, agree. Not much to add there. You covered it really well. I think being real clear on, hey, I'll, you know, make some introductions. I have to be a little careful with that, because I think sometimes if people aren't sure who Salo is and what my role is, that I'm going to be the one getting them a job. So I need to be real careful with what I promise and how I help. But usually it's just a few conversations and they, you know, but I'm absolutely love helping. And I feel like that's probably the most fun part about what we get to do at Salo, because sometimes we meet a lot of people who are just not at the right time in their career for consulting, and like, how else can we help? Sometimes it's like they're talking to me and they're sharing things like, I'm looking for a nanny, I can't even go to work the next day. And so where I can help make connections there. I love doing that kind of thing too. But as John stated, being real clear on, hey, follow up with me and make sure you put it back on them too. I want to help you, but you know, you keep in touch with me. And I think that over time, that's what relationship building is. It's following up, it's doing what you said you were going to do. And over time, like, that's essentially how you build relationships. So definitely, you know, be open to connecting with people that might not be helping you, but it sure is fun to help them. So.
And it's cliche, but what goes around comes around, folks. So just
100%.
remember, I say that to my kids every day. What goes around comes around, guys. So remember how you're treating people.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you, guys. So we do have a question in our chat. Somebody asked, how do we utilize polls in our post, or do they work to engage people in LinkedIn? You know, they said they saw somebody from a connection they saw somebody do it with a connection they had, and so they're just trying to working on becoming an SME in the LinkedIn space. I think I got that correctly. Yeah.
I know I don't know how to do that. Will or Sue, do you guys know how to do that? Because I've never done that.
I
Sounds
don't.
cool.
I haven't. I'm imagining it's pretty intuitive, because that's what most of LinkedIn is. I did, though, going back to the algorithm report, one of the things I saw in kind of the high level overview of it is they said that the polls were easier to do and more commonly showed up in someone's feed if it was done from the desktop version and then viewed in the desktop version. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if that's, you know, 100% accurate, but you may want to try playing around with it on the desktop version if you're having troubles with it in the mobile version, and maybe also be thinking about who your audience is going to be. Is this going to be people that are reading this while they're at their desk, or is this going to be someone who's, you know, nights, weekends scrolling through what new jobs are available on their phone app, and they might not see it in that because it doesn't translate as well. So just one thing. I don't really have a lot of knowledge though about the polling.
LinkedIn has a pretty robust help center. So bottom right of your home screen in your profile, it has a help center option. And you can, if you typed in polling, you'd have more information than you know what to do with.
Yep, good call. I was gonna say, I don't have the intel on the technical side of how to use the polling, but I would say just be thoughtful on when using the polls. Oh, it looks like someone is really using it. That's great, Crystal. Awesome. And maybe you can even in the chat, or if you want to share, oh, that's right, we can't really share, can we? But in the chat, if you want to share how it's working for you in a real success story or an example, that'd be awesome for the group. I just think being real mindful on what you want to get out of that poll, and just be ready for it. If it is a opinion question, just be ready for it all. You know, using it for I want to know what you care about, I think is really awesome to use on LinkedIn. And I'm trying to think of if I have ever, you know, gone on there, why I would do that. And it would be to help someone who's like, are you interested in this? You know, to kind of gauge where people are at versus an opinion. I am not going to respond if, in most cases, if it's an opinion. That's just me personally. That's not a right or wrong or best practice, but just kind of a different lens to think about on those polls.
So we have only about 5 minutes left. So I have one last question, and then hopefully the audience, if there's any question in there. So we want to hear some success stories. Any success stories that you guys have using LinkedIn, connecting with people, anything you could share with our audience today?
I have one. I'll go real quick. So I have a client that I used to work with quite a bit. That client moved out of state. And at that time, we weren't doing work, much work out of the state. And so we kind of just stayed in touch, but you know, it just wasn't as often as when we would work together when we were basically in the same city. Well, I just got a note from her recently, and she needs some help. So we have a call scheduled for tomorrow as she needs some help because she didn't know, we didn't keep in touch as much, but she remembered and just found me on LinkedIn. And she's like, that's right, found your name and contact information from LinkedIn. So shame on me, but LinkedIn saved me.
And I don't work in sales, but I try to support Sue and team in sales as much as I can. So mine is similar in that I recently had somebody that I reconnected with in LinkedIn. So we use that as our platform. And we hadn't connected for a while, but she's a friend from the past. But I try to not, my advice to everyone on this call, do not wait when you're in between jobs to start reconnecting with people utilizing LinkedIn. Use it while you're in a role, because the last thing you want to do is try to catch up when you're suddenly in transition between jobs and they're like, oh, I wish I would have kept up my contacts. So I try to every once in a while go through my first connections and my contacts on LinkedIn and just reconnect with people with a quick message. Hey, how are you? How are things at Cargill? You know, it's been a while. Hope things are great. Let's connect sometime when you have some time. I had done that to this individual a while ago, and then she reconnected with me, and they have a need for somebody for a project that I brought back to our team. And so, you know, keeping up connections, leveraging LinkedIn as our platform. And that's the other thing too. It's like she moved jobs, I moved jobs. We don't know each other's personal email addresses or professional email addresses anymore. So we know we're connected on LinkedIn. And so it's a great way to get connected with people that, you know, you haven't maybe connected with for a while. And that turned into a job opportunity for us at Salo. So success story.
Yeah, I'll just go real quick and see if there's any other questions from the group, because this has been great conversation today, and want to make sure we catch any questions that people have. But I did one time get a job through LinkedIn. So a recruiter found my profile, thought I was an interesting fit for the position they were looking for. And in higher ed, you don't typically say that because usually they're not looking for higher ed professionals. For those of you in maybe more high demand fields, you probably are like, oh yeah, I get pinged by people on LinkedIn all the time. But for those of you coming from education, you're like, yeah, that doesn't really happen to me as much. You got to do more of the reach out, but it has happened to even me from higher ed. So if you make your profile, you know, tailored the right way, and you can definitely lead to some new connections and hear about some cool opportunities. So I'll leave it at that. This has been great discussion. Would love, if there's any last questions, and I'll stop there with my sharing.
So just checking the chat. Doesn't look like we have any right now. So we're just going to take this time right now to just do last minute, any tips that you guys have. And also, if you're interested, plug your LinkedIn, let people connect with you, let people find you and how they can reach out.
The one thing I would add for parting words, Yamifa, one of the questions you had teed us up for, just any mistakes or when you're out doing your online networking, are there things to avoid? One thing I would just want to throw out there before we leave is, two words: be grateful and be flexible, right? So, a lot of times it's like, hey, I'd love to connect with you. And then you reach out back to them and they're like, yeah, I can meet for like 20 minutes next Wednesday afternoon. Like you got to have some flexibility if you're looking to connect with people. You're asking them for time, so you need to make time. And the second thing I would say is be grateful. I think being humble and being grateful, sometimes they get lost, but they shouldn't, because they're super important. And, that's people's time and energy that you're asking for, which most people are happy to give. But there's nothing wrong with having gratitude for that. So simple things about how you interact and connect with people, I think, are super important. So I would just, as you guys start to do this and really spend more and more time in LinkedIn and really ask to get time with people, which I encourage you to do, just remember those two things. I think they're super important.
Yeah, no, that was great, John. I think it's the same. I think be genuine and be yourself. There's a lot of best practices and things. I recently I put my LinkedIn profile out there. If anyone wants to connect with me, I would absolutely love it. And feel free to just make your profile professional, but you. I mean, I added some personal things into mine because I felt like mine was too cold and didn't really feel super warm. So I would love to connect with you, and just, again, be genuine, be curious, and just be yourself.
Yeah, I think this has been all such great advice, and you can really deep dive into relationship building and into how to use LinkedIn and both, but really it is like trying to use LinkedIn just as the tool that it is, and then moving that conversation to whatever platform, whether it's Zoom or whether it's face-to-face, whatever you can do to just build that. But one last link I'll put in the here at the very end is there's a podcast that I like to use a lot. It's manager tools or career tools, and they get really specific on like cultivating your relationships. And one of the things they said, and this one I was listening to, is your relationships are always, deteriorating or going away. As long as you keep reaching out to them and keeping them fresh, it's going to be the most important thing. And so as long as you just have that mindset, is like, if I don't pay attention to these connections that I built, whether it's I just met them at a conference or I just met them in some sort of networking event, like days go on and you'll lose, like, how did I know this person? What was that from? And so just keep in mind, you got to keeping in touch with all of these people. So I'll leave it at that, but I'll put the link here in the chat here shortly.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, John, Sue, Will, for joining us. Thanks so much for our panelists. Thank you for all our audience and engagement. This is really great conversations. I use LinkedIn a lot, but I learned a lot in this conversation too. So really do appreciate the time you guys have spent with us today. And hopefully everybody has a great rest of their day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks. This is great.
Thank you.
Great job, everyone. Thanks, Yami Faye. Good job.
Thank you. I'm trying to stop the recording. Okay.